tonight. So this is our first official meeting since the death of the Queen, and there are national protocols, of course, for meetings and events during the period of mourning. Parliament is not sitting this week, but we are following the protocol that local government meetings should go ahead. Before the meeting formally begins tonight, we're going to have a moment of reflection for the Queen. We opened books of condolence in Haringey on Friday. These are here at George Meehan House, Tottenham Town Hall, Bruce Castle Museum and our libraries. Flowers are being laid here at George Meehan House too, as well as Tottenham Town Hall and Bruce Castle Park. This is, of course, a significant moment in modern history. We haven't seen the passing of a monarch in this country for more than 7 decades. It comes at a time of change, a new government and the worst cost of living crisis in generations. Everyone in Haringey will obviously be thinking about what the Queen represented, a thread of consistency and stability that we've known for generations, and the new era to come. So we'll now begin a minute of reflection before we open the meeting. Thank you. For the public record, we have all Cabinet members present, as well as a number of senior officers and some non-Cabinet members and additional officers also joining the meeting virtually online. So I do have a note of attendees and speakers, but if virtual attendees wish to speak, they should indicate with the yellow hand icon and we will pick this up during the course of the meeting. And this meeting is also being streamed live and recorded by the Council for subsequent broadcast via the Council's website. So if I can start by asking the Cabinet members to introduce themselves and state their portfolio area, and this is for the benefit of the viewers watching the meeting. Mike.
Mike Hikata, Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Climate Action, Environment and Transport, with a frog in my mouth.
Thank you. Good evening. Councillor Ruth Gordon, Cabinet Member for House Building, Placemaking and Development.
I'm Julie Davis. I'm Cabinet Member for Communities and Civic Life.
Lucia Desneves, Cabinet Member for Health, Social Care and Wellbeing.
Zina Brabazon, Cabinet Member for Children, Schools and Families.
Seema Chandwani, Cabinet Member for Tackling Inequality and Resident Services.
Sarah Williams, Cabinet Member for Finance and Local Investment.
Adam Jogi, Economic Development, Jobs and Community Cohesion.
Councillor Donna Collin, Housing Services, Private Renters and Planning.
Thank you all. Do we have any apologies?
No apologies for absence, Chair.
Okay, and there's no items of urgent business. Do any Cabinet members have a declaration of interest to make tonight? No declarations of interest. Item 5, which is the notice of intention to conduct business in private. The agenda does contain exempt items as set out at item 15, exclusion of the press and public, and there were no representations received at the agenda publication stage in relation to the exempt items on the agenda. If we can move to item 6, which is the minutes, pages 1 to 28, if I can ask the Cabinet to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of July and the 19th of July 2022 as a correct record, please. Agreed. Item 7, which is the matters referred to Cabinet by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There are no matters to consider tonight. If we can move to item 8, deputations, petitions and questions. There were no deputations, petitions or questions received on any items. So over to item 9, which is the 2022-23 finance update, quarter one. And if I can ask Councillor Sarah Williams to please introduce the report.
Thank you, Leader. In my last report on the 2021-22 financial outturn, I highlighted the budgetary pressures expected to bear down on the Council this financial year, predominantly from external forces such as the economic landscape and continuing demand for services. Unfortunately, the full year estimated spend levels reported at quarter one are showing just how significantly these factors are impacting on our financial planning. With growing levels of inflation and wider economic pressures unlikely to abate to any extent this financial year, we must ensure that we maximise the delivery of our challenging savings programme whilst focusing on mitigating actions that will bring down the current spend estimates. Directors have been tasked with revisiting all current plans and looking for options to contribute efficiencies, as well as reassessing how they can gain more traction on the delivery of savings programmes. It seems very unlikely that economic stability at a national level will be achieved in the short or even medium term. So we must focus now on actions that are in our control to stabilise the budget position as far as possible this year, therefore enabling us to have the best starting position for next year's budget and MTFS.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Does any Cabinet members have questions? No, and I don't believe there's anyone online. Oh, he's online. Okay, Councillor Corley Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. So 3 questions. Of the unrealised savings, a number are RAG rated, amber and red. How many would you realistically consider could be realised and how many are unlikely to happen? And inflation is obviously going to have a huge impact on the Council's budget during the entirety of this term, likely to mean even greater savings are required. Does the Council even have capacity for further savings? And again, given the level of inflation and rising interest rates, I'm assuming that some future capital projects will no longer become financially viable, as borrowing would likely become too expensive. So what's the expected impact on the Council's capital programme and house building programme in coming years, especially as I note that a number of the capital projects have been carried forwards in the budget, so haven't actually commenced yet. So perhaps those projects might actually incur greater costs if borrowing hasn't been contracted out yet.
Okay, thanks, Luke. We may need a combination of people to respond to, so I'll start with Councillor Williams, and then if you want to bring in John or Robbie and David.
Thank you. If I answer to the and then I'll bring in other people. So on oh, is he gone?
He's still there.
He's still there. Oh, okay. Basically, all the amber RAG rating unrealised savings are live and current, and red would be no, they're not deliverable as explained. Further capacity for savings, that's something that all directorates, as outlined, have been looking for, but we're not there yet. And the third point about capital, I don't think it's any secret that clearly with the economic situation as it is, new business models will have to be worked up for a lot of the capital projects, and that those are works that are currently ongoing. Yeah. Do you want to come in on any of those?
I don't think I've got anything much to add to what the Cabinet member said there, Leader.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Thank you. No more questions. Can't see the screen. Okay. All right, so if we can move to the resolution, if there's no more questions, which is the approve the recommendations as set out at pages 30 to 31. Do we all agree? Great. Thank you. Item 10, which is the Haringey Safety Valve Programme. Councillor Brabazon, can you please introduce the report?
The DfE have asked Haringey to apply to become part of the 2022-23 Safety Valve Programme. This is designed to assist local authorities in reducing overspends in their high needs block expenditure, which forms part of the Dedicated Schools Grant. This is funding provided for special educational needs and disabilities from the government. Currently, Haringey is predicted to have a huge overspend in special educational needs and disabilities, which would increase cumulatively, which, if not dealt with by 2027-28, could seriously undermine council finances within the general fund. The government offer, whereby historic deficits could be eliminated, is predicated on the council developing a series of detailed plans for systemic change and service transformation. This is a challenge for the service, and one which I believe we can meet, as we already are engaged in a very significant change process of wider strategic transformation of SEND services in the borough. This process, which is currently underpinned by our written statement of action, is underway in partnership with our key stakeholders in our schools, the wider education, health and care sectors, children, young people and their families. This work provides a further springboard for more extensive and longer term change, whereby special educational needs and disabilities resources will be prioritised for early intervention and support, and where changes as to how and where special educational needs services are provided are linked to a wider education strategy. The report before you sets out key strands on how this will be achieved and provides the basis for a special educational needs and disability service which aims to intervene early and provide support required without always having to refer to an education, health and care plan, providing services locally in the borough for children and families. I commend the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brabazon. Is there any questions? Councillor Chanwani.
Councillor Brabazon, obviously before this idea came up from the government to do the safety valve, we already had plans in train. So how does this safety valve link with our current plans?
Well, as I say in my introduction, we're currently working to the written statement of action, which has already meant that the service is engaged in a whole series of delivery plans and project plans, which have been reported to the DfE periodically following the Ofsted inspection. So Safety Valve, in a sense, is expanding all of that and will engage the service in many more plans of great and significant detail, which again will be negotiated with the Department for Education as we move along to achieve the objectives of the programme. If you want more detail, I could ask Jackie DeFalco, who's online, to provide additional detail, Chair, if you wish.
Jackie, can you hear us?
Apologies, yes I can. Just to echo what Councillor Brabazon has said, it's absolutely correct that the Safety Valve programme is underpinned by our written statement of action and our SEND strategy, and we had a high needs block recovery plan that has been in place for just over a year, where we were already trying to tackle two things: one, to improve outcomes overall for children and young people with SEND, but also to reduce the deficit. So we're not starting from a zero position, and we've been reporting progress to our SEND executive that has parent care representatives on there and our schools forum, and both have been pleased with the progress to date. Essentially what the Safety Valve programme does is give us the pace and leverage to be able to have much more momentum and create that systemic change that we want to in the borough.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Dasnett.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really useful to just think about the broader context in which we're in, and I wondered if Councillor Brabazon wouldn't mind just explaining, are overspends in high needs blocks uncommon, and have other local authorities been involved in the safety valve programme?
No, they're not uncommon. Overspends in high needs block is a national issue. It's an absolute national problem, significantly caused because the 2014 reforms, which extended the age range in SEND up to age 25, were not funded to do exactly that. So the reforms were I think, well received, but unfortunately the financing didn't follow. So Haringey is not, we're not alone in the problem of having a massive overspend in the high needs block. Could you repeat your second question? Sorry.
Yes, just wondering if other local authorities have been involved in the safety valve programme.
Yeah, Haringey has been invited by the government to participate, but we are not in the first wave. There has been another wave of authorities, Hammersmith and Fulham, for example. I think, I hope I'm right in saying Kirklees, but several other authorities who also found themselves with very high needs block expenditure. So this is an invitation, and the request tonight is to ask Cabinet to allow us to take the plan forward to the DFE. As the report says, we have to submit our first programme by the 15th of September, which is why it is before Cabinet this evening.
Councillor Davis.
Yes, this is obviously an agenda driven by the government. Are you confident that our young people with special needs and their families won't be disadvantaged by this?
I am, actually. I think that this is an incentive for us to review what we do. As I said, this is a programme which we've already initiated to transform how we deliver SEND, to bring young people who are often with very high needs, who are often educated out of the borough, back into the borough, to have, we can develop that here. We are, possibly we can bid for some capital funds to adapt buildings to do that, and to use our high needs block funding in a different manner. I think it offers us an opportunity, and we now, I'm very grateful to finance officers for providing additional support, so we have a team who are working to deliver a programme in local government terms at breakneck speed.
Thank you. Any more questions from Cabinet members? No. Okay, Councillor Corley-Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. So given the predicted overspend in the SEND service, how can you as Cabinet member and the Council be confident this debt write-off agreement and the extension of the what was in play live strategy will help prevent the future debt build-up, and you'll actually manage to achieve this within the 5 years? What's the contingency if it doesn't happen and the debt needs to be paid off through the general fund, which I would assume isn't actually feasible? And with the scale of the savings required, what services do you expect may need to be cut or reduced to meet the needs of the agreement? And does the government have any particular stipulations on that as part of the programme?
Give you a general answer, and then I might ask Jackie to come in with more detail.
Okay,
in summary, the government will set us a target which we will have to try and meet. How we do it is how we develop our plan, and if we are successful, the intention or the offer is that the government will then write off or remove, if you like, our debt burden. If we don't do it, as I said, we could seriously impair the ability of the council to provide other services. So it is a position in which we find ourselves. In developing the programmes, I think we can see from the last year, since we've had our new team and since the high needs block action plan and so on, that there are different ways to do things, that there are better ways to do things than perhaps we've done in the past. And our real objective is that we have to provide services to children and families which are provided with trust and confidence before the strictures of the statutory education and healthcare plans kick in. That is what a good special needs service should be doing. And I'll hand over to Jackie to expand on that, because that is our principal theme, along with early intervention and good transition planning for younger people at the moving from children's to adults, where there's a lot of work to do to improve.
Thank you, Councillor Bravison. Councillor Corley-Harrison, I'm so sorry I didn't catch the first question, but if I can come on to the other two and come back to the first, if that's okay. So in terms of the second question, what will be the impact if we are left with a deficit position? At the moment, it's currently ring fenced, so we're able to carry over the deficit position, and it has to be met from future income from the DSG block. That's an arrangement that we have for now. So even if we could afford to pay it from the general fund, we couldn't do that. In terms of the longer term position, I don't know if that will be something that will continue. It's been indicated that that may not be the case, and there's been a national consultation that we have responded to about what the impact would be for us as a local authority. I don't know if my colleague John Waller would want to add anything to that question before I move on to the next one.
Thank you. As the report says, if we were to continue on with the existing position without the implementation of the sort of actions that the plan would require, our forecast is that our deficit held in a ring-fenced state as it stands at the moment, as Jackie has described, would grow quite considerably. And this participation in this programme requires us to put in place agreed measures agreed by the Minister, which would bring down the deficit before we can get the position into an annual balance, which happens within a 5-year time frame, to bring that cumulative deficit down to a level which they would find acceptable. And our ask to them will be for them to fund all of that deficit position. It may be that we are successful in that. It might be that we're successful for a high proportion of that. We need to see exactly where we end up on that. But this is our best chance, Leader, of getting a strategy which either eliminates or minimises the call upon the general fund resources at some point in the future. Thank you.
Luke, did you want to repeat the first question?
I think Zena probably answered the first question, and I'll just let Jackie come in on the third, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. So if we can move to the resolution on this, which is to approve the recommendations.
Sorry, I think Jackie should come in on the third.
Oh, right, okay. Jackie, can you answer the third question, if you can remember that one? Can you remember the third one? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was in relation to what are the scale of savings that we may be talking about. I mean, the first thing I can say is that this is a programme that is building on a huge piece of work that's already been done already in terms of improving outcomes for children. So I can give you complete assurance that what I am seeing is a reduction in complaints, an improvement in compliance, an improvement in quality, and improvement in outcomes for children. These programmes, it is about taking money out of the system, but it's about redistributing it elsewhere. So one of the examples is we're looking to invest in in-borough provision, so we can have children accessing good quality education within the borough. That's about taking money from external providers out of borough provision and investing it in Haringey. So it's an example of we've got 3 work streams, 18 projects, all of which are not about reducing outcomes to children or cutting frontline services. It's about reinvesting it in a different way and making sure that the money and the funding stays within the borough for Haringey children and Haringey outcomes. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Jackie. So if we can now move to the resolution, which is to approve the recommendations as set out at page 73 to 74. And before you can do that, if I just point out that the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny has agreed that the call-in procedure shall not apply to this decision for the reasons that have already been set out in the agenda and which will be included in the minutes. So do we all approve? Thank you. Item 11, which is the approval to consult on a draft Parks and Green Spaces strategy. Can I ask Councillor Davis, can you introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. The report is at page 87 of the pack. This meeting is invited to approve the beginning of consultation on a draft Parks and Green Spaces strategy, which is attached in some 400 plus pages in the report. Although the Cabinet report is quite short, and I'll just draw your attention to page 4, the bottom of page 4, the key aims of the new policy: inclusion and well-being, climate change and sustainability, and a quality service in the Park Service. We need a new strategy. The existing one is about to expire, and the new one will take us from 2023 to 2028. The most important part of this is a reframing of our approach to parks to look at accessibility and inclusion, particularly for groups that feel that there are barriers to them using parks using parks for leisure services, and there's been extensive consultation with them. But we now move forward to the formal consultation period, which starts on the 26th of September, finishes on the 27th of November. There are a lot of appendices to this report, but the main text of it represents a new strategy for parks, and I commend it to you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Can I just check? So it's a rather lengthy document. So in terms of the consultation, I know we'll have the whole thing there, but will there be a summary so people can engage with the consultation document?
There will, Chair.
A few. Okay. Any questions? Councillor Hakata.
I don't know if this is a question, it's more a comment, but there's just a quick, just for the record, you made a minor slip, Councillor, said till 2028, it's 2038.
Sorry.
Yeah. But I can say that 400 pages of riveting reading. I loved every minute of it. And there were 3 plans that connect with my portfolio, climate and environment, which I just wanted to just underline because I think they're really good inclusions. The Watercourse and Flood Risk Plan, which outlines a nature-led development of water features for flood risk mitigation and biodiversity benefits. The Tree and Woodland Plan, which outlines our proactive tree planting policy, very ambitious policy going forward, outlines our approach to managing subsidence claims, and also our commitment to community engagement and information sharing. And finally, the Biodiversity Action Plan, which has a summary of the latest SYNC review. And the SYNC review, which was undertaken, designates 10 new sites of importance for nature conservation in the borough. And I think Haringey leads on this. I don't think there's any other borough in the capital that has expanded SYNC designations by 10 at all. So I think we're outliers there. And obviously that's going to be really important in terms of improving access to natural green space in the east of the borough, and that was one of the focuses of that review. And I'll just finally say that one of those new sites of importance for nature conservation is the Westbury Banks Nature Reserve, which hopefully you've all been to, and if you haven't, I highly recommend it. But that is a real success story of resident action in reclaiming disused land, and it's really amazing that that is now a SYNC in the borough. Thanks.
Councillor Jokey.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, Julie. Can I just bring colleagues' attention to page 148, where it talks about current engagement and how engaged parks and green spaces. Councillor Carlin and I are very proud, obviously, to represent Hornsey, and you'll know the padding pool in Priory Park has been an issue of interest recently, and we wanted, well, I say we, certainly I, wanted to just understand a little more about how we think our young people can play a role in this engagement process, and any thoughts being given to their views, their thoughts, their wants, their needs. Because increasingly, you know, our parks are places where young people and children and their parents have to go in the context of, you know, overcrowding and such. So that's the first question. And the second one, if I could bring attention to page 208, pesticides and chemicals policy in parks and green spaces. I'm a bit of a nerd, and some folks may know that chemical regulation in the UK is in a state of some flux at the moment, as EU translated regulations have been not moved over. And I'm not trying to catch you out here, Julie, as you look quizzically, but all I'll say is, can we just keep an eye on that? Because what may have had EU licenses under UK law, that may no longer be the case in the months and years ahead. So it's just to keep an eye to make sure that we're not engaging in the Brexiteer race to the bottom.
Thank you for that, including that very technical question, which I'll probably hand over to somebody else. On the involvement of young people and parents in parks, you raise an interesting point about Priory Park and the paddling pool there. Both the paddling pools, Bruce Castle Park and Priory Park, are coming to the end of their natural lives, and you will know as ward councillors that we had to go to enormous lengths to make sure that Priory Park paddling pool was up and running for the 6-week summer holiday. We struggled through the summer term, even getting it open at weekends because the pipework was damaged. So we have identified funding to revisit water play in those parks. And we know that across London and elsewhere, that young children and even older children are, very much engaged in water play in parks, and paddling pools are probably quite an old-fashioned way of delivering that kind of play. So this gives us an opportunity to go to the community and to families to discuss with them what sort of thing they'd like to see to replace it. We can replace it with something that's more hygienic, that makes it easier for big and small children to play in the same space, and perhaps best of all, that we can have single-use water that we capture and use to water trees instead of chlorinated water, which we're using at the moment. So that we will be co-producing those arrangements with users of the park, parents and families. So, but why, on a wider issue, the crux of this is co-production. We've involved different groups, and certainly, disability groups from different minority ethnic communities, LGBTQ plus groups in identifying the strategy so far, and the intention is to continue with maximum engagement from the community. On the issue of pesticides, this is obviously a bit of a moving feast, but the council's intention is to be as green as we possibly can in this area. We obviously have certain legal responsibilities to invasive species of different kinds, but we have to balance that against our desire to eradicate the use of certain pesticides and be at the leading edge of this across the country, and certainly across London. So there is a pesticides policy in there, but the additional detail that you've raised, I think, must be handled by an officer. So I don't mind which one does it.
I guess that's me then, thank you. In relation to the pesticides and chemicals policy, the version in front of you is likely to change very slightly, following off of some dialogue between Councillor Carter, Councillor Davis, Summer Farrow and myself. So there's some slight editing, which is actually going to push us more towards an even greener type of approach. But in relation to the use of glyphosate, it's something that we are very mindful of, and we want to make sure that we're keeping abreast with what's going on with the EU analysis of that particular policy as it currently stands. We do know the history in relation to the United States, a different type of setup over there, but very mindful of that ongoing assessment, which hopefully will be produced by the end of this year. If it's not produced by the end of the year, we will keep tabs on what's going on with it anyway, and review that on that basis.
Thank you. Can I just, in conclusion, Chair, just thank Councillor Davis for her very good answer, but also for the help to get Priory Park paddling pool open during the summer. It wasn't a catch question, it was genuinely appreciated by lots of local people.
Including me and my daughter, I should add. Okay, is there any other questions from the Cabinet? Okay, Councillor Cooley Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. So the proposals on the strategy are not yet budgeted. I think section 11 of the report, maybe 11.1, something like that. Given the financial pressures we've already discussed, how can residents be confident that strategy will turn into reality? And Appendix 5 says, under the proposed charging policy, tennis courts will become chargeable at peak times. The council was recently committed to keeping tennis free for all in the future. When the booking platform came in, was it a year ago, something like that? Has the council now U-turned on that, or is this just sort of badly worded and it's linked to the existing training contract? And then also the tree and woodland plan that Mike referred to makes clear that the council intends to carry out the replacement of trees using the resident funded sponsorship programme rather than its own funds. What percentage of the council's street trees do you expect or need to be paid for privately by residents of the borough to meet demand?
Thank you. I'll hand over on the budget question and the street trees question. Before I hand over on the tennis question as well, I'd just like to say that there is good news on the tennis front, and that some of our courts are being resurfaced. And I'd like officers to draw that into their replies, please.
Thank you. In relation to the financial perspective, obviously we will be looking for additional funding if possible through the capital programme to support some of the work we're looking to take forward. But some issues, for example, in relation to the delivery of 10,000 additional trees by 2030, we are moving ahead with that programme anyway quite consistently with the support of additional resources from outside agencies. In relation to the input from local residents, we're not wholly dependent upon that, but we would encourage it wherever possible. It's been a good way of actually topping up the level of service we're able to provide. So what was the third question? And tennis. You want to ask that one, Simon?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mark. I have to put my hand up and say that's wrong in the document, and we'll amend that going forward. That's an oversight on my part, and I apologise for that. It shouldn't have said what it says there about tennis charging, because the policy is of the council not to charge for tennis.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
So many pages, I was looking for what I was asking about. I want to ask you about flood risk and linked to climate change, really. I mean, we just saw in the rain the other week, like Marfield Park got quite heavily flooded. There are problems with drainage, and on one hand we've had a drought and then we've had massive rain, and I'm just curious to know, I think this is a fantastic piece of work in putting all these plans together, but how that would go forward to protect our parks in the light of all what we're seeing before our eyes in relation to climate change.
One of the challenges we have in relation to flood risk management is the ability to tap into existing watercourses and the Thames Water sewers. We know there are issues with some of those sewers. We plan to have conversations with both Thames Water and the Environment Agency moving forward, and with a view to actually making sure that we're working on the blue space as well as the green space in parks, to actually make sure that they're effective as possible. We are looking to develop further sustainable drainage schemes as set out in the flood water management investment plan from back in March of this year. So there's an ongoing programme of work which we're looking to take forward, and it doesn't just cover highway, it covers parks as well.
Thanks, Mark. Is there anyone else who's now found the page they were looking for? No. Okay. So if we can... All right, if we can move to the resolution, which is to approve the recommendation as set out at page 88. Are we all agreed? Thank you. So item 12, which is the... Okay, yeah. So subject to amendment, which is the point that Simon made, which is that the policy around tennis courts is that they will be free. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. All right, so if we can move to item 12, which is the appointment of a programme-wide sales and marketing agent to support the housing delivery programme. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, as Councillor Armitt has just said, that this is a report asking for support of the an approval of the appointment of a sales and marketing agent for those small number of homes that we will be selling on the open market. The cost of the appointment would be a maximum of 3.9 million over 5 years. Why do we have to have market sales in our programme anyway? And the reason for that is that we've got a high demand on our house building programme. We want the best designs. We want a high quality build spec. We include in our house building programme houses for particular needs that will require more space and so on. We are aiming for zero carbon. We aim for passive house standards where we can, and we want to build as many larger homes as possible. All of that adds up to quite difficult sometimes to make that come about in a viable way. And the way in which we do that, of course, is that we have some grant thanks to the support from the GLA, and we can borrow against future incomes. But there still becomes a gap, and that gap we have to fill with some market sale. We have kept that to an absolute minimum, and you can see from the figures in the report that in terms of our overall programme, then 16% of the homes would be for market sale. But we're coming to a place in our house building programme now where some of those homes will be finished and need to be sold and marketed, and we haven't got that expertise in the council. So this is the purpose of the appointment of a sales and marketing agent. We think that provider will be able to give us, having a single provider will be able to give us efficiencies, and will also be able to provide a branding for for this model across that is consistent across the borough. But it's not an exclusive agreement, and in other instances we will be able to use local estate agents as well on for smaller purchases. We are not saying, by the way, that we will have to spend 3.9 million. We are putting that forward so that there is a cap on the maximum amount that we think that this will that this could possibly cost. So I think I would leave my remarks to at that, Chair, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Councillor Corley-Harrison.
Thanks. The 4 million, Ruth, or 3.9 million, sorry, is that all inclusive, or is there then additional commission or bonuses for each sale made? Or is it kind of the 370 units that are being sold, if they only get offered the job on half, they only pay 2 million? Could you just explain kind of how that maximum 3.9 million actually works? And then given the kind of the forecasted sort of pressures that we've spoken about again, are there plans to increase the percentage of homes that would be available for private sale and therefore subsidising the programme to keep it on track? And the report references kind of the normal position for estate agents or this sort of thing, which is a kind of commission-based site-by-site appointment, which was refused kind of from my reading on marketing strategy rather than on financials. So would there have been a cost saving if the council had gone out on a site-by-site basis, appointing an estate agent on a per site fee basis or commission basis? That doesn't seem to be included in the report at all. Thanks.
Thanks. I will ask Office to supplement my my remarks. The 3.9 million is an absolute maximum, so it could well be quite less than that, but we have to come to Cabinet in order to get approval for that. But that would be over the whole of the 5 years, and it doesn't necessarily mean we have to spend up to that limit by any means. It would depend on how many are sold, and there would be a commission basis on each one. I'll ask the officer to just add to that in case I've not made that quite clear. There's no anticipation that we are going to increase the number of for sale. We're not in the business of, being, a council that is just building, private homes. That is not our business. What we do, this is a sort of necessity in order to make sure that each scheme that we bring on board actually can wash its own face financially. So it's born out of necessity. We're not envisaging trying to increase that amount. Obviously, on every one of our schemes, we will have to put each scheme through the ringer as and when, because we know that interest rates have gone up, we know that cost of materials have gone up, and so on. So where we have to do, but it is a question of, this is a mechanism in order for us to meet our viability on each and every scheme. It isn't that we are engaging in an expansionist, let's be a house builder instead of being a council providing council homes. I wonder whether I could ask the Assistant Director to come in on the last question and supplement the cost question.
So on the fees question, so it's 499,000 for the consultancy items, which are 6.17.1 to 6.17.7 in the report, and then the rest of the expenditure would be on a fixed fee basis. So 3.9 million represents a maximum that could come to, but obviously if less homes go through this particular contract, the expenditure will be a lot less. So all the rest of all the additional 3.4 million pounds worth of expenditure would be on a fixed fee basis. It would need to go through the sales to reach that. And so if you can remind me of the last question. Sorry. So we have got a very competitive fixed fee offer. Obviously that'll be in the exempt part of the report. Had we procured on a site by site basis, I don't think we would have as competitive a fixed fee offer. Also, it's worth saying that while we don't have a large sales program, we do have individual sites where we do have very large sales. Ashley Road Depot being sort of the clearest example, but also some of our regeneration sites are a little bit further down the track. And so I think we do have a number of sites in our programme that I think local sales agents would struggle with. So we would need a larger sales agent to deliver those anyway.
Thanks, Robbie. That's clear.
Thank you, Robbie. So if there's no further questions, this resolution will be considered in the exempt part of the meeting. We'll move on to item 13, which is the minutes of other bodies. Can we please note those minutes? Some nice, okay. There are no new items of urgent business, and if I can move to item 15, which is exclusion of the press and public. So the Cabinet will now consider items 16 to 18, which contain exempt information in relation to items 12 and 6. So can I move that the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting to consider this exempt information